Okay, so welcome back. This is part 2 to the video. Does a one-day late payment affect my credit? In this video, we're going to be talking about how to work towards correcting singular late pays, what constitutes a late pay, and then strategies to avoid late payments altogether. Okay, so what's considered a late pay anyways? And many people don't realize that if you make a payment that is one day late, that may be considered late to the creditor, but it's certainly not going to be considered late when it comes to posting a late pay to the credit bureaus. Federal law requires that a late payment has to go a full 30 days before it reports to the credit bureaus. Now think about that for a minute. In the previous episode, the part 1 of this episode, we talked about some substantial reasons as to why a late payment might incur. Know that if you're one day late, it's not going to hit your credit, but if it's 30 days late, it will indeed hit your credit. So you can actually time out how this late pay may affect you. If you can go 29 days after it's due, which is considered late with the financial institution, and not let it go 30 days late, it'll never hit your credit as a late payment. So think about that for a minute from a strategy perspective. I see all too many people that had the ability to actually not hit that 30-day late trigger, but they didn't think far enough ahead to make that payment at 27 days. I'll hear them say all the time, well, I paid it, one day after it was going to report to the bureau. Well, if you would have thought a little bit ahead, you could have paid it on day 28 or 2027, and it never hit your credit altogether. Now, remember, the creditor does consider that to be late, so they're going to charge you late payment fees, and they're probably not going to be very happy with you. But it's never going to hit your credit profile. Okay, so let's say you have that late pay and you're already 30 days late. Okay, a 30-day late pay is not as severe as a 60-day late pay, which is not as severe as a 90-day late pay, which is not as severe as a 120, a 150, 180. And it goes without saying that each time you miss your payment, it gets worse. The trick here is to get caught up as soon as you can. If you can pay a little bit, go ahead and pay a little bit. But you want to try to get caught up on that late pay as soon as possible. The second that you make that payment and it reports to the credit bureaus, you're going to automatically see an increase in score. Also, if you get too far behind and it goes all the way down to 180 days, remember that can turn into a charge-off and ultimately a collection. Now, what can you do about late pays? Is there a way to get that corrected with the credit bureaus, with the original creditor? The answer is, of course there is. That, of course there is, doesn't apply to everybody. Let's say that you have an account, and within that account, you're late every other month. That creditor is not going to be in a hurry to help you by marking that account as paid, as agreed, never late. That's not going to be a thing. If you have credit that's nearly perfect and you simply had one late pay, there's lots of different ways to get that corrected. The first thing that I recommend that you do is that you call your creditor. Call the creditor that marked the late pay on your credit profile. Talk to them about your situation. Now, if you watch the first part of this particular video, I referred to keeping open lines of communication, budgeting, discussing these things with your credit. So if you're calling them that you're late, that creditor should have already known that there was a potential that you were going to be late this month, and you've already talked to them about that. Now, if you've never had a late payment with this specific creditor, a lot of times those creditors will actually give you a goodwill fix. In other words, they will, out of the kindness of their heart, mark that as not ever been late. And that is something that's fairly common in our industry. Now, if you're somebody who's been late consistently over the last 3 or 4 years, that same creditor is probably not going to be willing to work with you. So reach out to the creditor. If they deny you and say, no, we don't do that, which a lot will actually tell you that because that's what they're told to tell you, the Fair Credit Reporting Act says if it's accurate, then they can keep that on your credit. They're not breaking the law by doing that, but there's somebody in that organization that can fix that for you. So what I recommend you do if you get denied by going through the customer service rep, talking to the supervisor, then I recommend that you write them a letter. You write them a letter, explain to them that you contacted them before you were going to be late. You write them a letter. In that letter, you want to talk to them about the fact that you were proactive to begin with and told them that you might have some financial things coming up. But then also in that letter, you want to talk about the relationship that you've had with that financial institution. Hey, I've been with you guys for 10 years. I've never been late. This is the first time I've ever been late, ever had any type of issue, and you're going to ask for a goodwill deletion of that late payment. Does this work every time? Not necessarily, but you've got 2 steps that you've already followed. The first thing is you've called the creditor. That didn't work. Now you're going to send them documentation to their corporate office. Somebody in the corporate office can actually fix that for you. You just got to get to the right person that's willing to press the delete button for you. Simultaneously, I'd also dispute it with the credit bureaus. You might as well. So you've reached out to the creditor directly to talk to them about this late payment, and let's say that that's failed. You even asked to talk to a supervisor, and they also failed. They told you, they cited the Fair Credit Reporting Act saying it's accurate and they're not going to remove it. So you're going to write that letter. The very next step after that is you're going to look at your credit report and you're going to see if every piece of that same account is accurate across all three bureaus. And if it's not, then you're going to dispute it with all three of the credit bureaus. And that's a solid, sound tactic to try to get these late pays corrected. Let's say that we're in a situation where you actually weren't late. And this happens all the time also. You made a payment online at day 29, but it happened to be on a Saturday or Sunday. It didn't post till Monday, and now it's reporting you late. The company says, hey, look, it's our policy that if you make a payment on day 29 on a Saturday or Sunday, it's automatically going to be late because we're not going to receive that payment until Monday and update it with the credit bureaus. So there's a late pay involved anyways. There's other things that you can do to get that late payment corrected, and one of those might be to approach regulators. And you've heard me talk about this in previous sessions. You might go to the cfpb.com, submit a complaint and say, listen, I made this payment on day 29, not day 31 like they're claiming. It's caused a late payment to hit my credit profile, and I'd like to get that fixed. So you've got lots of different ways that you can get things fixed when it comes to late payments, and really anything, honestly. Okay, before we get into how to avoid late payments altogether, remember there was a first part to this video. Feel free to watch that first part of the video. Also, if you like this content, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Okay, now we've talked about how to correct a late payment. We've talked about budgeting. We've talked about all kinds of good things in these last two videos, part 1 and part 2 of this video. So what are some sound strategies to avoid late payments altogether? That's really the key, right? How do we set up and design a system so that we're never late on our bills? And that never be the issue, then we never have to correct anything. The first thing that I recommend is that you put everything on auto pay. I'm a big proponent of this, and I wasn't when it first came out many, many years ago. I was a little bit worried about having banks dig into my account to take out minimum payments when the money may or may not be there. But it does make sense to do auto pays, especially on your credit cards, because that's where most of late payments happen from what I've seen. On credit profiles, it's mostly credit card issues. And those minimum payments on a credit card are relatively small. We're talking $15, $20, $25. To have your credit destroyed over a $25 payment just because it got off your radar doesn't oftentimes make good sense. Along with setting up auto payment, most creditors have the ability for you to go into the alert section and you can have them automatically trigger an email for when the payment's due, when the payment has been received. You can also do text message reminders in those same areas when you go into your online account. And the final thing that I recommend in terms of just trying to keep your budget straight and make sure that all your bills are paid is that you can actually change your due dates to whatever date you want during the month. So as an example, I have 10 or 15 different credit cards and a lot of things going on in my budget. Everything comes out of my account on the 1st. I don't have things sporadically coming out all throughout the month. I intentionally call those creditors, I go online, and I make sure that they all come out on the same day so that it makes it easier for me just to manage.